My husband said I was just being dramatic, that I was overthinking things, that maybe I was just bored and trying to stir up trouble. But deep down, I knew something was off. The late night calls, the sudden meetings, the cold silence between us. It wasn't just in my head. Still, I stayed silent until I found the proof. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply let the truth unravel, message by message, lie by lie. He thought I'd fall apart, but in the end, it wasn't my voice that exposed him. It was his own secret. If you've ever been told you're just imagining things, this story is for you. Tap the heart, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more revenge stories that speak truth louder than silence. My name is Clara Emerson, and I'm 38 years old. I live in the heart of Chicago, where the skyline feels like home, and the wind always carries stories, some beautiful, some brutal. I work as the head accountant for a mid-sized architecture firm. Numbers have always made sense to me, unlike people. Numbers are reliable, predictable. People, not so much. For most of my adult life, I believed I had found the exception to that rule. My husband, Darren. We met when I was 27. He was charming, charismatic, and driven, working his way up in real estate with a confidence that made everyone around him believe in his vision. He said I grounded him, that I was his calm in the storm, and I believed him. Darren and I were one of those couples people envied. We had the loft apartment downtown with exposed brick and high ceilings. We hosted dinner parties with perfectly paired wines, and we took matching suitcase vacations every spring. From the outside, everything looked perfect. Inside, well, it felt perfect too, at least for a long time. We laughed. We built things together, financially and emotionally. We supported each other's careers. He used to kiss my forehead every morning and say, "I don't know how I got lucky enough to marry you." I'd smile and reply, "Must have been your killer credit score." We didn't have kids, by choice. I know that's unusual for some people our age, but it worked for us. We loved our independence, our freedom, our late-night Thai takeout in bed. We had built a solid life, one I was proud of. But in retrospect, maybe that's what made it easier for things to slip through the cracks. When your life feels like a well-oiled machine, you don't notice the rust right away. You just keep going, assuming everything's fine, until one day it isn't. It started small. Darren began coming home later than usual. At first, he blamed traffic, then client dinners. He stopped asking about my day, stopped noticing when I wore the red dress he used to love. One night, I brought him a cup of tea while he was working late in the office, and I saw him quickly turn his phone over, face down. That moment stuck with me like a splinter in my brain. I tried to brush it off, told myself I was tired, maybe even a little paranoid. After all, we'd been married over 10 years. If anyone knew Darren, it was me, right? But the signs kept piling up. He started guarding his phone like it was classified. Whispered calls, sudden weekend showings with vague addresses, a new cologne I didn't buy him. And then there were the arguments. Or rather, the gaslighting. Whenever I brought up my concerns, he'd twist things around. "You're imagining it, Clara. Don't you trust me? You're acting insecure. That's not like you. And the worst one, you always do this. You get in your own head and create problems." That one cut deep, because I wasn't the type to get jealous. I wasn't the clingy wife snooping through drawers or checking locations. But suddenly, I started feeling like I was. He made me question myself, my instincts, my reality. Still, I didn't tell anyone. Not my coworkers, not my sister, not even my best friend from college. I didn't want to hear what they might say, because deep down, I already knew. But admitting it meant I'd have to face what came next, and I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. So I buried myself in work. I threw myself into spreadsheets, financial forecasts, and late nights in front of my laptop. I told myself maybe I was overreacting. Maybe he really was just busy. And still, every night, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling fan, listening for the sound of the door. And when it finally creaked open, sometimes past midnight, he'd walk in with that same tired smile and say, "Long day. You should sleep, babe." Then he'd kiss my cheek like nothing was wrong. But something was wrong. And no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, it was about to come crashing through everything we'd built. The real unraveling started on a rainy Thursday in March. It had been one of those gray, sluggish Chicago days where everything feels damp, even your mood. I left work a bit early, exhausted from back-to-back meetings and a migraine that had been crawling behind my eyes since lunch. I thought maybe Darren would be home early too. Maybe we could order ramen and watch that documentary he kept putting off. Something normal, something grounding. But when I walked through the door, the loft was silent. Not empty, but silent. I heard muffled voices from Darren's office at the end of the hall. His door was cracked, and for some reason, I didn't call out his name. Something in me paused. Instead, I walked quietly, careful not to let my heels echo. And then I heard it, her voice. Young, high-pitched, a little breathy. She laughed in that overly sweet way women sometimes do when they're trying too hard. Then I heard Darren say something low and flirtatious, something he hadn't said to me in months. My heart froze. My brain, however, went into a strange, numb overdrive. I didn't burst in. I didn't scream. I turned and walked straight back out the door. That night, I lay awake listening to the rain drum against the window pane. Darren got home just past 11, his hair damp, shirt half untucked. "Oh, the storm was crazy," he said casually. "Traffic was a nightmare." I stared at him for a long second, wondering how many times he'd practiced that line in the car. He leaned down and kissed my forehead. "You okay?" I didn't answer. But something inside me, something I didn't even know was there, had just cracked wide open. The next few days were a blur of forced smiles and pretending. I cooked dinner, laughed at his jokes, played the part. But behind the scenes, I started watching. I paid attention to his phone habits, his credit card statements, the scent on his collar. I even changed the password on our shared iCloud account, something he hadn't thought to lock down. And there it was. Text messages from a contact named Nate R. Except Nate didn't text with heart emojis and say things like, "Last night was amazing. I can still taste you." I felt sick. I scrolled through weeks' worth of messages, photos, voice notes. He called her babe. He sent her pictures from our vacations, claiming they were for work inspiration. He even promised to take her to Napa this summer, something we'd planned together just a month ago. My hands shook so hard I had to put the phone down. When he came home that evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the phone unlocked, the messages pulled up. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I simply said, "Tell me who she is." He froze. For the first time in our marriage, Darren actually looked afraid, but only for a moment. Then he scoffed. "Seriously, Clara, You went through my phone? That's a violation. You're acting crazy. Who is she? I repeated, my voice as cold as the rain outside. She's a coworker. It's not what you think, and honestly, I can't deal with your drama right now. My jaw clenched. You've been sleeping with her. He rolled his eyes. God, Clara, why do you always do this? You overanalyze everything. You obsess. It's exhausting. I stared at him, stunned, not by the betrayal, but by his refusal to even acknowledge it. That's your response? Not denial, not regret. Just blaming me? He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? Fine, I'm sorry. But let's be real. You're not exactly thrilling to come home to these days. That line. That one line. It burned through my chest like acid. I stood up slowly. You're unbelievable. He just shrugged. Look, maybe this isn't working anymore. Maybe we've outgrown each other. I'm successful, Clara. I can't be tied to someone who doesn't see the big picture. My voice cracked for the first time. I built that picture with you. Every brick, every late night, every spreadsheet. I made your success possible. And then he smiled. That smug, condescending smirk that made my skin crawl. You, Clara, without me, you're just some number cruncher with a mortgage and no social life. Let's not pretend you're irreplaceable. It was like a slap to the soul. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. Instead, I turned away and said quietly, You're right. We've outgrown each other. And at that moment, I made a silent promise to myself. He would regret every word, but not because I screamed, or begged, or fought. Because I would let his own choices destroy him, and I'd make sure he watched every second of it. The weeks that followed were a blur of motion and numbness. I didn't leave Darren right away. I wish I could say I threw a suitcase in the trunk and drove off into the night like a movie heroine, but real life is messier than that. Instead, I went quiet, and that silence terrified Darren more than anything I could have screamed. He kept walking around the loft like nothing had happened, making coffee, watching ESPN, asking if I'd seen his blue tie. He must have thought I was frozen, too hurt or too weak to act. But I wasn't frozen. I was calculating. Still, that didn't mean I wasn't broken. At night, I curled up in the corner of our bed, my back to him. I cried into the pillow, careful not to make a sound. Because if he heard me crying, he'd think he still had power over me, and I couldn't give him that. Not anymore. I stopped wearing makeup, stopped cooking dinner, stopped trying. He noticed. Clara, you look tired. Are you okay? I wanted to laugh or scream or throw something. Instead, I said, just busy with audits. You know how Q1 is. He nodded, already checking his phone, probably texting her. That's when I started documenting everything. I created a folder on my personal laptop named Tax Stuff, password protected, buried under layers of work files. Inside it, I stored screenshots of text messages, call logs, and credit card charges linked to restaurants I'd never been to. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was building a case. I also started keeping a journal, not for legal reasons, just for me, to remember who I was before this marriage devoured me, piece by piece. I wrote things like, he doesn't look me in the eye anymore. He smiled when he texted her during our anniversary dinner. I missed the sound of my own laughter. I had given Darren 10 years of my life, my youth, my trust, my loyalty, and he'd thrown it away for a girl who didn't even know how to pronounce Merlot. It would have been funny if it wasn't so tragic. One day, I ran into my old friend, Camille, at Whole Foods. She and I used to be inseparable until Darren started complaining that she was too dramatic and always single. So I pulled away, like he wanted. "Clara?" she said, eyes wide. "Oh my God, are you okay? You look different." Hikesmon. The kind of smile that stretches but doesn't reach your eyes. "I'm surviving." We got coffee that afternoon. I didn't tell her everything, but I told her enough. And Camille, bless her, didn't pity me. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're not the woman I remember." The Clara I knew wouldn't have let any man, especially not Darren, treat her like this. That hit me harder than I expected. I went home that night, stood in front of the mirror, and studied my reflection. Tired eyes, pale lips, my curls pulled back in a lazy bun. I looked like a ghost of myself. But beneath that, I saw something else. A flicker. Not rage, not sadness. Resolve. The next morning I woke up at 5 a.m. I brewed fresh coffee, put on a sharp navy pantsuit I hadn't worn in over a year, and went to work early. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was getting ready. Around that time, Darren started acting strange. He'd peek into my screen when I was working. He'd ask what time I was coming home. He even started bringing me flowers, cheap ones, from the corner store, as if daisies could patch bullet holes. And then, one night, I heard him on the phone. He was pacing in the living room while he thought I was asleep. "She's not reacting," he whispered. "I don't know what she's planning. It's freaking me out." That's when I knew. He was afraid. And that was the first real victory I'd felt in months. But fear wasn't enough. I didn't want him to feel nervous. I wanted him to feel powerless. And for that, I needed a plan. I didn't change overnight, but every single day, I took one small step back toward myself. I stopped waiting for Darren to get home, stopped asking him what he wanted for dinner, stopped even reacting when he walked in, smelling like expensive perfume that didn't belong to me. Instead, I focused on reclaiming the life I'd lost inside the marriage. I updated my resume, quietly reconnected with old friends, especially those Darren didn't like. I started attending a yoga class on Saturday mornings, then stayed afterward for smoothies and laughter with women who reminded me who I was before all of this. But beneath the calm, I was still watching him. And what I saw made my stomach turn. Darren wasn't just having an affair. He was planning an escape plan for himself. He had slowly started moving funds from our joint account to a separate account under his business name. He assumed I wouldn't notice, but I was an accountant, a forensic one at that. If he thought I wouldn't catch a trail of money laundering disguised as contractor payments, he must have forgotten who he married. I documented everything. Bank statements, IP logs, tax inconsistencies, even a sketchy property he'd started buying in another woman's name. This wasn't just betrayal. This was strategic abandonment. He was planning to leave me with crumbs after chewing through everything we built. One night, as I sat on the couch with a cup of chamomile tea, Darren strolled in humming some tune and dropped his keys into the bowl by the door. "Long day?" he asked, loosening his tie. I looked up from my book and said, "You should check the bathroom sink. It's been leaking again." He blinked. "Oh, yeah, sure, I'll get to it." And just like that, I turned the page, like he was background noise. He hated that. In the past, he thrived on reactions. He knew how to push, provoke, manipulate. But now, I gave him nothing, just calm, quiet indifference. And it was destroying him. He started staying home more, asking if I wanted to do something fun this weekend. suggesting a quick getaway, just us. I'd smile and say, maybe another time. What I didn't tell him was that I had already hired a divorce attorney. Not just any attorney, a shark. Camille had introduced us. Her cousin's firm specialized in high-asset divorce and corporate fraud. They didn't blink when I laid out the details. They said, "We've seen worse, but rarely this stupid." And that's when the shift happened. For the first time since Darren's betrayal, I wasn't just reacting. I was leading. I learned that the property he was funneling money into was already under scrutiny for zoning violations. His firm had been hiding assets, misclassifying expenses, and, worst of all, commingling client funds with personal ones. I didn't need to expose him. He was already digging his own grave. I just needed to light the match. But before I could, Darren gave me one final gift, something I hadn't expected. It was a Thursday. He brought home a bottle of champagne and Thai food, our old tradition. He set the table, lit a candle, and sat across from me with a smug grin. "I've been thinking," he said, between bites of Pad CU. "Maybe we should renew our vows." I stared at him. He leaned forward. "I know I've made mistakes, Clara, but we've got history, a life. I was stupid, but I want to make things right." I didn't say a word. He took my silence as a sign. "We can start over. Forget everything that's happened. Just you and me. No more secrets." That line, it almost made me laugh, because what he didn't know was that in less than 48 hours, his secrets were about to be certified mail. I sipped my wine. "That's sweet of you, Darren." His smile widened. "But you're right," I continued. "We should start over." He nodded eagerly. "Exactly. Fresh slate, but not together." His face twitched. "Wait, what?" I set my fork down, wiped my lips, and looked him dead in the eye. "I'm done pretending. You think I didn't know? About her, about the money, about everything. You lied, you cheated, and you underestimated me." His mouth opened, but no sound came out. I stood up slowly. "You should check your email." He blinked. "Why?" "That's where you'll find the divorce petition, and a copy of your financial records. Oh, and a lovely little PDF of those texts you thought you deleted." He stood too. "You went through my—" "I'm not done," I said, my voice firm. "You'll also see a letter from my attorney and a notice that I've formally withdrawn all my shares and rights from our joint real estate LLC. Legally, quietly, irrevocably." He paled. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. But I did keep the receipts. All of them. He took a shaky step back. "You can't do this." I already did. And for the first time in years, I felt free. I walked past him, calm and poised, like a woman walking away from a fire, one she didn't bother trying to put out. By the time Darren read the email, I was already gone. Not gone in a dramatic way, with luggage rolling behind me and tears streaming down my face. No, I left the way a strategist does. Quiet, planned, and irrevocable. I moved into a friend's empty condo near Lakeview, one Camille had helped me secure months earlier under a private rental agreement. Everything I needed was already there. Fresh sheets, coffee, my favorite books. Peace. Meanwhile, Darren was left in the wreckage. I had pulled my share of our joint assets weeks before filing. Everything I was legally entitled to, and nothing more. But to him, it was everything. His business? I hadn't touched it, but I had reported it. Not publicly, privately, anonymously. See, while I was collecting receipts, I noticed several shady tax filings tied to Darren's company, client accounts that didn't match with billing records, cash payments with no invoices, and offshore accounts connected to one of his consultants. At first, I just saved the evidence for my attorney. But then I remembered something Darren once bragged about during a party. He laughed over drinks and said, "You know, if the IRS ever looked closely, half of the guys in my field would be behind bars." So, I decided to give them a reason to look. I submitted an anonymous tip through the IRS whistleblower program with detailed documentation. It took me less than an hour, and I didn't stop there. One of the properties Darren had tried to sneak under a fake LLC. I traced it back to zoning violations, unpaid contractor fees, and unpermitted structural work. A quiet call to the city inspection office was all it took. Within 2 weeks, that project was red-tagged and shut down, pending an investigation. Suddenly, Darren's empire wasn't just crumbling. It was catching fire. He called me nonstop. Texts, emails, voicemails that ranged from angry to apologetic to downright desperate. One message said, "You don't have to do this. We can fix it. You're better than this." I didn't reply, not because I was being cruel, but because I had already replied. Every document I filed, every transfer I authorized, every lie I quietly exposed. That was my response. And Karma? She did the rest. A month later, Camille sent me a link. It was a local news article about a well-known Chicago real estate developer facing federal audit, suspected fraud, and business shutdowns due to anonymous reports and financial discrepancies. There was a blurry photo of Darren outside his office building, surrounded by reporters, shielding his face. I stared at the screen, emotionless. Then I closed my laptop, walked to the window, and let the sunlight pour across my skin. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I was clean, like I had scrubbed every toxic trace of him off my life. And as for the woman he cheated with, she didn't last. The moment the money dried up and legal troubles started, she bolted, blocked his number, deleted him from social media. Turns out, she wasn't in love. She was just in for the ride. Darren lost his business, his reputation, and his little secret romance. And me? I started fresh. I took a job in Boston as a senior finance advisor for a nonprofit I'd always admired. They offered flexible hours, meaningful work, and most importantly, peace. I got an apartment with bay windows and a little herb garden. I went to therapy, took cooking classes, started dancing again, something I'd given up years ago. I relearned how to be alone and found out I liked it. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think about the way Darren looked at me across the dinner table that last night. How certain he was that I'd never leave. How certain he was that I couldn't leave. And now, he's a cautionary tale in my past. I didn't destroy him with rage. I didn't expose him with loud accusations. I simply let his own actions speak, louder than anything I could ever say. That's the thing about karma. It doesn't knock. It doesn't warn. It waits until you're looking the other way. It's funny how peace doesn't feel loud. It doesn't come with fireworks or applause. It's quiet, gentle, like the sound of your own breath when no one's asking you to shrink. Now, years later, I don't hate Darren. I don't think about revenge or justice anymore, because the truth is, life already gave me both. He lost everything he thought he controlled. I gained everything I thought I'd never have again. Freedom, self-respect, silence that wasn't filled with walking on eggshells. Sometimes, I walk by the lake and remember that girl, the one who sat across from her husband at dinner, smiling through the cracks, the one who thought enduring pain was the same as being strong. I want to reach back and tell her, you don't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need to burn bridges to build a new life. You just need to believe that you deserve better, and then act like it. Revenge doesn't always look like a screaming match or a courtroom scene. Sometimes it's as simple as walking away with your head held high, while they fall apart all on their own. And if Darren ever hears my name again, maybe in a whisper, maybe on someone else's lips, I hope it stings just a little. Not because I want him to suffer, but because I want him to remember. The woman he underestimated didn't break. She rebuilt, and she never looked back.